Evolution of life forms, a theory. One of the theory already we stated in the previous topic. Conventional literature says that a theory of special creation, which is given by Father Sarich, is totally of mythological belief. Says that God is created. As I said, that God created the entire life in 6 days, because I said according to the Christianity, the 7th day is a holiday, the Sunday. According to this theory, they have 3 connotations there. And what are those 3? I mean, what are the 3 steps or the meanings according to this theory of special creation? According to this theory, they says that all this creation as created as such, whatever you are observing is there from the beginning till now. There is no variation. Another connotation is whatever the diversity of forms you are observing is created from the beginning, and now whatever you are observing, and even it will be the same in the future. I repeat, whatever the diversity we are coming across is same from the beginning of the origin of the earth, and the same now, and is same in the future also. So there is no variation again. And according to this theory, as already I told you, the earth is just 4,000 years old. It's just a purely of mythological belief, and this theory of special creation is strongly objected in the 19th century after the Darwin's exposure to this natural selection. I mean, he explored and he visited several islands and continents in the survey ship by name HMS Beagle. He is a British naturalist who is appointed by the British government, and their duty is in order to explore and to find out the flora and fauna of different continents and islands. And he proposed the theory that Charles Darwin called as a natural selection theory. And when he visited, and he strongly opposed by this whatever these conclusions he made and observations he made, based on that the theory of special creation is strongly objected. Why? Because they say it as such, no variations, whatever the life is the same. But here, according to the Darwin, he says that existing life forms, they share similarities and also to varying degrees. Existing life forms will share some similarities, whatever the life is existing on the earth. As I said several times, evolution is the one which you need an elaborate explanation, or else you won't get like it won't create a quest also in you in order to read this chapter. So listen carefully for the statements what we are quoting thus with the elaborate explanation, guys, here. So here, existing life forms share similarities to the varying degrees, whatever the living organisms present as of now, the existing life forms. We can call it as extant, the living forms. They share the similarities among them and also of varying degrees. They share similarities, at the same time they differ with one another, not only within the organisms of now, as of now extant, and also they are going to differ with the case of the life forms which had used to live over millions of years ago. And this, the life forms which survived over millions of years ago, they're not represented, they are extinct. If theory of special creation is right, no organism should be extinct, every species should be represented from the origin of life till now. But it's not happening, pretty well dinosaurs became extincted. So many life forms became extincted. Here and then, now and then, you'll maybe come across in the case of electronic media or the print media saying that so and so called species got extincted. Recently they said that so these species are being again identified. They thought to be extincted but again identified. Go through it. Some 3 to 4 species had identified again like that. So here we mean to say that Darwin says that some species got extincted. And here, evolution is gradual, and he says it is a branching descent. Okay, gradually, according to Darwin, the evolution is gradual, it is a continuous, and it gives rise to the branching descent. Means from one species, there is origin of other species, and that species, this species. So, according to the conclusion of this Darwinism, we can say that it is a branching descent is one of the key concepts of this Darwinism, saying that life is, the origin of life, the evolution of life is continuous. So, moving on to the case of the next thing, all the organisms of a population, they develop some characteristic features called as variations. In order to survive in a particular environment, they develop variations. In one word, we can say variations are universal. And what are these variations? It may be suitable to that particular environment, or else it may be not suitable for that environment. Mane beneficial variations, maybe some harmful variations, or some neutral variations. So whatever the characteristic properties developed by the organism, why they develop these characteristic features? In order to suit, in order to adjust to their environment, to their nature. As we said, some of the natural conditions, the climate, the food, the physical factors and all. For example, if the animal living, the polar bear, to live in that polar extreme cool climatic conditions, it should show some adaptations in order to survive that particular environment. I hope you got my words. What I mean to say here it is, why the organisms are developing. As I said, the evolution is gradual. It is a branching descent. From one species, it gives rise to the branches to form a species, different species. Not every time it's like that, but it is a branching descent, which is a key concept of Darwinism. And as I said, the population will develop some variations, some changes in them. Why they develop variations? In order to adapt to their surrounding environment. Okay, fine. So, nature, according to the nature, they'll adjust, they'll develop some characteristic features. And Darwin used the word called as a survival of the fittest. He used the word survival of the fittest, but this term is coined by Herbert Spencer, the one whom the personality who coined the same, the evolution term. Evolution term is coined by Herbert Spencer, and even this survival of the fittest is also termed by the Herbert Spencer. Darwin used the word by name survival of the fittest. So when he is on a voyage, I said that he went on a voyage, actually he went on a voyage for 5 years as a naturalist in order to explore the flora and fauna of different islands and continents, guys. In that time itself, he wrote this, he come to conclusion of natural selection theory. That is a big thing in the case of a big theory, in the case of the science of evolution. Moving on to the case of here, as I am saying, Darwin used the word survival of the fittest. What does it mean by the survival of the fittest? The one which is selected by the nature. Nature selects the organism with some beneficial variations which are suitable to that particular environment. The one with suitable particular environment is not that called to be the survival of the fittest. Who is called to be the fit? According to the Darwin, the fitness is represented, it is denoted as a reproductive fitness. What does it mean by the reproductive fitness? If the organism developed some characteristic features which are beneficial to that, which are adjusted to that particular environment so that it can able to survive. Such an organism, if it shows reproductive fitness, means it leaves more progeny when compared to the other. Now we need a detailed account. For example, there are 3 species are there. For example, A, B, C. If we talk about A he is not having any, all these 3 are selected by the nature in that particular environment. Because environment is dynamic, it keeps on changing. As it keeps on changing, the organism want to survive, they also want to change and adapt to that, adjust to that particular environment, then only they'll survive. If they fail to adjust to that particular environment, they'll be eliminated from that nature, they'll die, they'll become extinct. I hope you got my words, what I mean to say. For example, A, B, C are the species which are selected by the nature. Though they are selected by the nature, we won't call them as a survival of the fittest. They survived in the struggle of existing in that particular environment. Though they survived, for example, if you talk about the A is not having the reproductive potential. It is not able to produce progeny. And B, for example, it produced the 10 species out of 10, 5 are sterile, 5 are fertile. Means sterile is the one, they don't have the capability of reproduction. Fertile, they have the capability of reproduction, they can produce further generation, further progeny. And coming to the C, for example, it produced 8, all the 8 are fertile. According to all these 3 species, who is most survival, most fittest? C, obviously. Because as it is producing the fertile offsprings, they can be represented in the future generation. So I hope it's clear. Again, I am saying the organisms which developed the beneficial variations selected by the nature. Once selected by the nature, we won't call them as a survival of the fittest. The one which is selected by the nature, which is fit, then we'll call them as a fit, who having more reproductive potential, who can leave more progeny, and that progeny can be going to survive, and that represent again the next generation, that's called as a survival of the fittest. Moving on to the case of the next phenomenon, as I said, the Darwin is the one, the theory given by the Darwin is called as a natural selection. So natural selection and the branching descent are the 2 key concepts of the case of this Darwinism. So nature selects the organism. Nature is selecting whom? The one with beneficial variations, the one with more reproductive potential is clear. According to him, the evolution is gradual, continuous. Moving on to the next scientist by name Alfred Russel Wallace, who worked in Malay Archipelago. Actually, archipelago means you know that it is a group of islands. Malay Archipelago is also called as East Indies, and it is located in between Indonesia and Australia. It's a group of islands located in between the case of this Indian and Pacific Ocean. It's called as Malay Archipelago. It's one of the nationwide question that Alfred Russel Wallace, A.R. Wallace or Alfred Wallace, he worked in Malay Archipelago. He came to the same conclusion as such as a Darwin, and he says that developing of means he's also said the same, coming to the same opinion that original types depart from their, the diversity of life originally, it departs from their varieties, original types. It means to say that it is diversity is seen from the one type, from original type, later it goes to be diversity. What the Darwin said like branching descent, in the same way Alfred Russel Wallace also said that it leaded to the diversity of original types. From the original types it departs. Okay, fine, here it is about Alfred Wallace, that is Malay of Archipelago. So the existing life forms, they share similarity and share common ancestors too, and which are now, they are not existing, they are vanished from the case of this earth, they are nothing but we call it as a extinct. You can't see all the ancestors of us, means not only us, several organisms. If you talk about the aves are originated from the case of whom, that is Archaeopteryx. That is not there, it is extinct. So many like this are there, some of the ancestors, they got extincted. And here we can say that one thing we can come to know the ancestors when they lived, at what time they lived, for that we know for better thing by geological time scale. Geological time scale is means what actually? You know the earth have different layers. The uppermost layer of the earth is the youngest, is a new one, recently formed actually. And whereas if we talk about the lower layers of the earth is the oldest. As the fossil is found, the remnant of the organisms which lived in the geological past is called as a fossil. For example, if dinosaurs something had found, we call them as a fossil because it's now is not living, it's extinct, it's not extant. Extant, living, extinct, it's disappeared, it's vanished, it is used to live in the geological past, not right now. So if the fossil had found in the superficial layers is the youngest. The recent fossil. If it is obtained in the lower layers, very deep layers, it explains that it is an older one. So based on the age of rocks, even the same for the rocks. If the rocks are found in the deeper parts of the earth's surface is a older, upper surface is a new, the recent one. So based on the age of rocks in the earth's surface, it's called as geological time scale because geological history correlates with the biological history. For example, if the so-called organisms remnant the fossil had found in the so-called rock, we can come to know this rock belongs to this age, so probably that organism is also belongs to that age. So geological time scale is classified like this: epochs, periods, eon, eras. Means here I said like this, the recent one is epoch, next one is a period, era and eon. Eon is the oldest one. Eons are divided into eras. Eras is nothing but called as Mahayugas. We'll call it as that is Maha Purva Yuga, Maha Madhya Yuga, Maha Adhunika Yuga, like this. So that is divided into the case of the periods. Periods means we'll call it as yugas into the case of yugs, Kali Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, like this. And then it is called as epochs. Epochs means nothing but shakas. So that is the one. Eons is the largest time scale, is the older one. And here later into eras, later into periods, later into epochs. I would like to say this is helpful for us to study the age of the particular organisms which are the ancestral ones which lived in the geological past. So as I said, the geological life history is going to correlate it with the biological life history because you know that as for example like theory of special creation, they said that earth is just 4,000 years old. But you know that earth is thought to be originated around 4.5 Baya or 4,500 Maya. 4,500 or 4,500 Maya, million years ago. Earth is not the recent one, is the older one. So we can find so many organisms not only living in the present, some of the organisms which used to live in the past, which became extinct, and they are maybe the ancestors for so many organisms who are representing right now on the earth. What are the evidences for this evolution? Why we need evidence? Evolution cannot happen in an overnight. It may happen, it may take thousands of years or millions of years. So no one is evident for that because the human lifespan is short. So no one is evident for the evolution so that you can believe yes, evolution had happened. So we need evidences in order to believe, in order to trust this, yes, evolution had happened. One species is originated like this and so-called species used to be lived in the geological past. Okay, the very first evidence I would like to discuss is the paleontological evidences. What is paleontology? The study of fossils is called as paleontology actually. What are fossils? Fossils are the hard parts, the remnants of the hard parts of the organisms which lived in the geological past. For example, if we talk about the dinosaurs, dinosaurs are thought to be extinct around 65 million years ago. And there, now and then you might come across in the case of their so-called bone had identified, this skeletal part had identified, that part had identified, you might have come across this. So, fossils are the, we don't call the, if the hard parts of if hard parts are available of the extant organisms, living organisms, we won't call them as a fossils. Fossils are the hard parts of an organisms which remain, they are the remnants which remained of the organisms who lived in the geological past. So the study of fossils is a great evidence for us in order to believe that evolution. So horse evolution is a good example that horse is actually evolved through the different stages, and even it proved the Darwinism saying that evolution happened gradually. It had originated from a small sheep size to the horse. Horse means is familiar for its height. So it had evolved in such a way. So evolution of this, how we come to know the evolution of horse? By finding their bones and all in the case of this earth sedimentary regions. So earth have different sediments. Rocks forms these sediments. So as I said previously, based on the age of the rock, because you know that is crust, mantle, outer core and inner core. Based on where actually the fossil had obtained, based on that we can come to know, yes, to this age it belongs. Even so many examples are there of the fossils which, by this knowing the fossils, we come to know to which age of the ancestor belongs and what are the modifications had happened. From that ancestor, if any descendant, I mean the originated, another species is originated, what are the modifications had happened from that to this? What are the evolutionary aspects had happened? Is any evolutionary trend is happened? In the case of horse evolution, as I said, there is a trend had happened, evolutionary trend had happened that changes in the case of the length of their limbs and also in the size and the length of the toes. Okay, that is a different scenario. So here, the good one, we can say that radioactive carbon dating technique is the technique which is used in order to find out the age of the fossil. If you know the age of the rock, you come to know the age of the fossil. In this technique, it is one of the familiar technique where we can study the age of the fossil by knowing the amount of radioactive isotope present in that particular rock. As I said that geological evidences, I mean geological things will be helpful for our biological things. So, if geological identification happened, to which age the rock belongs? The same age, because sedimentation happens. As I said, rocks forms the sediments. You know, well here some of the fossils might have found in the case of the rocks, actually speaking, here it is. And the ocean is the best site for the sedimentation because oceanic water is the very high salt content and it checks the rate of decomposition. So, water-borne sedimentary rocks are the best forms for the fossilization, for the formation of fossils. So, fossils are obtained in the sedimentary rocks and this proves the age of that so-called fossil. Okay, so here it is about, and paleontological evidences are the documentary evidences, like a document. If you have a property, if you have an asset, you say that yes, I have an asset, will show the documents. In the same way, how the evolution had happened, in order to represent, in order to trust that evolution had happened, the paleontological evidences are the, because the dinosaurs so-called, whatever the remnants had obtained, by this we can say yes, dinosaurs used to be present in the past, now they are not present, from which some are evolved into birds. So that scenario I'll tell you. So this is about the paleontological evidences. Coming to the next one, that is embryological evidences. What is embryology? The study of the early development of an organism, the study of embryo is nothing but called as embryology. So the evidences from this during the early development of an organism is called as embryological evidences. The very first scientist I would like to talk about is Ernest Heckel. Ernest Heckel is the scientist who proposed the theory called as biogenetic law, or it is called as recapitulation theory, or is also called as ontogeny repeats phylogeny. What is this actually? Ernest Haeckel, who is considered to be the father of embryology, he says that during the embryonic development of an organism, it passed through its ancestral stages. He quotes several examples for this. For example, if you talk about in all the vertebrates, including the human beings, during the early development of an embryo, behind this head region, this pinna region, they have a slits called as gill slits. And this gill slits, pharyngeal gill slits is one of the fundamental character of all the chordates, And these gill slits are functional only in fishes, and they become rudimentary, underdeveloped, and they won't be represented in the case of other organisms other than the fishes. And even he says that during the development of the moth or the butterfly, the caterpillar larval stage, it represents the annelida, because arthropodans are the descendants of annelida. Annelida are the ancestors of arthropoda. Arthropoda are the descendants of annelida. I hope you got my words, what I mean to say. Arthropoda originated from annelida. So that is the best example. Even he says the tadpole larva of the frog is also the evident during the larval stage of the frog. It resembles same as like a fish. Amphibians had evolved from the case of this so-called fishes. In evolutionary aspects, whatever we discuss, that is a great evidence. Based on that itself, they are taxonomically, systematically arranged, and we come to know, yes, fishes are the next. After fishes, amphibians, reptiles, aves, mammals, so-called like this. So, Ernest Haeckel's theories is disproved by the observations done by the Carl Ernest von Baer. This is the NEET 2020 question. Ernest Haeckel's proposal is disproved by the von Baer. Von Baer says that during embryological, no organism passes through their adult ancestral stage during their embryonic development. During its embryonic development, it doesn't passes through the adult ancestral stages. So, von Baer disapproved this theory of Ernest Haeckel, that is biogenetic law, and he is considered to be the father of modern embryology. So, even embryological evidences also gives how that ancestors, who is the ancestor of whom. What I said, all the vertebrates show some common features. Then only we'll consider them as, yes, they are vertebrates. All the chordates show some fundamental characters like notochord, nerve cord, pharyngeal gill slits, and the post-anal tail. So these are all the evidences we can say, yes, they are evolved like this from one to other. So this is about the embryological evidences.